right, everybody. Welcome back to the No Doubt About It podcast with Mark and Christy Ronchetti. Yes, I gave you top honors. Top billing, sir.
Oh, gee, thank you.
Top billing.
Thank you.
Look at you in your golf shirt today.
Yeah, well, I got a little lunch to go to right after this, so we got to cook this thing along. Got a little appointment working.
I come in from Bible study, and Mark's like, we got to go. Get up here. Let's do this. I'm like, okay. And he's got his golf shirt on, so I mean, it's very serious right now, ladies and gentlemen.
And by the way, I don't golf really, so I'm not wearing a shirt just for that reason. But we do have a lot to talk about here. We're going to talk about something very interesting right off the top, and that is how our campaign's changing and our candidates now changing with them. And it's an interesting article, and it comes from the left. It comes from David Plouffe, who ran Obama's campaign. He wrote this for the New York Times, but I think it applies to conservatives too. And I think he actually gave some pretty wise words that make a lot of sense, and something that you've actually talked about.
Yeah, I could have actually wrote this article 5 years ago.
Well, that's very,
as a matter of fact, but
is a possibility.
Certain people who shall remain nameless on campaign teams shot me down.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that.
Yeah. We will indeed, and then we'll also talk about an article. We mentioned it a few weeks ago with Mike Garofalo when he was on. Dan Boyd wrote an article that Republicans are having issues in the state. Your humble meteorologist was quoted in that article, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to get into what's going on with the Democratic Party and why are the numbers for them actually a massive concern. And it's not that Republicans are going to go rolling in 2026. I still think that's going to be very rough. But you're starting to look at things and you're seeing why, if you're looking out into the future, and it's a little bit of what Plouffe mentioned in his article, they have real problems because the party itself is pretty extreme. And so we're going to get into details on that with some examples. And then a hilarious article from California. And it's not really an article. It's a TV segment. It's an investigative look from CBS California, actually, is what they're calling it, which is interesting. I guess they're kind of changing that now. It's usually LA or Sacramento or something like that. They're calling it CBS California on why gas prices are so high in California. And they got to the bottom of it. And it turns out it's government. Who knew?
Yeah, who knew
that was going to happen? And then we're going to talk about what's going on in Iran. JD Vance talked, I think it was Wednesday morning, and had some interesting things to say. And so we've pulled a couple of those clips as well. And then we'll end with Artemis 2 as well. So
okay, well, let's start with this. The old way of campaigning won't cut it anymore. This is an opinion piece in the New York Times. And I have to say, I couldn't agree more with this article.
This is fascinating what he gets into here.
So he says, many candidates' daily campaign schedules today look very much like they have for most of my career. Speeches to community groups, interviews with journalists, fundraising events, and meetings with local party activists with lots of driving in between. I think Mark could relate to that very much. Well, that won't cut it anymore. A successful campaign in 2026 must operate like a full-time production studio. Candidates and incumbents should center each day on content creation. That does not mean uploading the same video to every platform. It means creating output tailored specifically for TikTok or Instagram or YouTube. But what does this actually look like? Well, it means several hours a day of filming in campaign offices, even candidates' homes, offering a message that buttresses the argument they're trying to land. It will still be a punishing schedule, just with less driving on the roads and more driving of messages. Candidates still need to do the traditional stuff to stay in touch with voters' concerns, but to the extent that their schedules include speeches, events, and interviews, they should only be there because they fit into the content calendar.
Oof. That's a serious line right there.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that part, but let's keep going here.
Okay.
The rundown of a candidate's day is the best measurement of whether the campaign is consistent with the theory about how to win. You still need to be a top communicator, basically. They still need to build the production studio. To win today, you need to harmonize your message across the ever-growing list of ways people are reachable. Traditional TV, connected TV, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Reddit, podcast, Snapchat, radio, video games, community events, door-to-door canvassing, phone calls, and texting. Oh, geez, let me take a breath after that. There has to be a plan, a budget, and an approach for each of these. Some voters can be reached via many of them, some just one. Communicators need to be everywhere, all at once. So let's take a quick look at this nutshell, what they're saying. The old campaign versus the new campaign, take a look at this. Basically, the old campaign model was TV ads dominating, occasional speeches, limited voter contact, seasonal engagement, and top-down messaging. Now they're saying you got to be a content machine. That means constant content creation, video first strategy, podcasts, social, digital, real-time rapid response, and data-driven targeting. And basically this 24/7 voter engagement is basically the breakdown of this article. And what's interesting about this, Mark, is I agree with a lot of this. I pushed really hard. I wanted to start our podcast actually about 6 months before the governor's race. And we had it all kind of locked and loaded to go because of our former news past and the fact that Mark and I had just wrapped the season of Mark versus the Mountain, the first season of it. And I felt like there was more storytelling to tell. Obviously, that's something that we're both passionate about. When he decided to run, I'm like, we for sure are putting this podcast together right now. We're going to do weekly updates. Mark's going to talk directly to voters. This was my pitch. I was shot down by literally, Mark, everybody that had ever had anything to do with a campaign because they said it's super dangerous, right? Like if somebody takes something you say out of context, makes a clip out of it, changes it around, that is a risk, right? They don't talk about that risk in this article.
No.
But still, I stand by what I said. And I said, if you ever run again, like if you ever want to run, I think you have to have that in-depth, direct contact. You can't be just hoping that the media covers you well. Because 9 times out of 10, they don't.
Well, and this gets back to, first of all, you're exactly right.
Thank you.
We probably
Thank
should
you,
have.
Mark. Should we say that again?
Yeah, no, we don't need to. We've said it once. And I think that's true. And I think what we've seen with this podcast is a good example. So if you look at to me, this is a numbers game. It's always a numbers game. You spend most of your time as a candidate, number one, raising money, and number two, talking to various groups. Well, when you sit down with a good audience, a good-sized audience for, say, a statewide campaign is probably 100 people, right? That's a good-sized audience. And then sometimes it goes up from there. We've had audiences as big as 1,000 people at rallies and stuff. But I'm not talking about rallies. I'm not talking like down the stretch. Like that does happen the last couple of weeks of the campaign. But most of the time, you're dealing with people between 50 and 100 people in a room.
Right.
The actual numbers on that and the math on it are very difficult to make work. It just doesn't work very well. So you start saying, all right, let's just use this podcast for example, which every time we go up on YouTube, we get between 20,000 and 40,000 views. Mm-hmm. You're reaching between 20 and 40,000 people that are seeing your message. When we do the clips, we get another 10,000 on that.
Easily.
Again, each time we do it.
Plus the audio, there's just download on
plus
our podcast.
The podcast, which is
just
thousands,
our podcast platform.
5,000-6,000 there each time. Okay, so as you start to add up all those numbers, you're looking in a week, we're reaching, 50, 60, 70,000 people. You can't even come close to that when you're trying to do it otherwise. So what you have to be able to do is establish a brand where people will watch you. So if you're a candidate going forward here, you've got to be a top tier communicator and you've got to build out a structure. Because if you just show up the day you announce and you're like, I'm going to do a podcast, and then you do it, nobody watches it, that's a problem for you, right? Now, a lot of times what will happen is if it's a big time race and you're a real candidate, you're gonna get people to come in and watch. They're gonna start watching, especially your opponents. Yeah. And they will try to cut up what you're doing. So there's some real danger there. There's some real concern. But I absolutely agree with Pluff here. He's right. And Republicans need to do the same thing, which is be a content creation machine. Get your message out there. Worry less about stepping in it. I get it. Stepping in it's bad. You don't want to do that. But in this day and age, stepping in it isn't what it was at one time. Unless you say something absolutely horrendous, okay, and you're a terrible human being, right? You say some terrible thing, whatever that is. In most cases, you're going to be able to work through that because the avenues in which you get the message through to people are so diverse, you've got to fill them. And it's critical, and you've got to be a very good communicator.
Well, that's the thing I would argue. The main thing, the biggest reason I wanted you to do it, Mark, and the reason I wanted us to do it was because I felt like you're a naturally gifted communicator, and you can speak on camera well, and you can actually talk to people. You can connect with people very easily. I don't think that's the case for a lot of people that are out there trying to run. But I do think even if they did short videos where they can directly talk about the issues that are pressing in the moment and make sure that voters hear your voice right from the very beginning. Not everybody's got a podcast studio like us. Not everybody's got the time or energy to put that to place. But I do argue that that's going to be the new wave because you got the younger voters out there now too. This is how they get their information. So, it's interesting that I think they may not go to the town hall. I can't remember how many people said, I didn't know he was having a town hall. I never knew he had a town hall. He came to town and I didn't know about it. When you're putting that message out like crazy to get people to show up to those, and they're like, well, I never got to talk to him. I cannot tell you how many emails I've received on this show in the last 3 years that we've been producing this that said, had I known, I did not vote for Mark. Had I known what Mark stood for all these things, which I'm still just like, how did you not know? We put the messages out there. We had a good website. We did all the things we could do. They said, I would vote for him now based on your show and listening to him on the daily. I think that's interesting. I think it's a direct connection to people.
You can't be afraid to go out and engage people. And I think part of what happens with political consultants is, and I'm not even talking about ours, but I think in general, political consultants are always most scared that they're going to put you in a situation and that it's going to be an absolute abject disaster and you're not going to be able to handle it. And I think one good thing that we're starting to see in the political environment now is more access to people. In other words,
it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you'll start to see more and more here is you don't have to be this world-class communicator necessarily, but what you do have to do is be authentic, and you need to have people, and the people you need to hire are ones that are very effective at putting and packaging your message together and getting it out there. And I will tell you, there aren't very many of those people in this state. There are very,
maybe
very
we should
few.
start that job, Mark.
No.
Maybe that's a new job for us.
We're not doing that at all. But it is important, right? And giving you those bite-sized pieces of information that you continually put out constantly here. So it is a changing field. Now, is TV still going to be a big deal? Yes. That's where most of your money is still going to be spent. And I think live television is where most of it is spent, meaning sports. So in other words, if you're a candidate coming up here in the next 6 months, and let's just say you're in the general election, I think we're going to see most of the ads. And if I'm spending money in these campaigns, I'm going to the NFL. And it's going to cost me a ton of money. There's no question, but I'm getting eyeballs on it, right? And then this stuff they talk about here, and you talk about Link TV, and that's basically your Hulus of the world, and that's your Netflix.
That's expensive, by the way, just so everybody knows.
Oh, it is. It is.
That was one of my ideas. I had all these ideas 4.5 years
ago.
ago.
Christy is a revolutionary. She really is. She's come up with this stuff before anybody else. And no, I agree with you on the podcast.
I did. I even said if you won, I thought we should still produce the podcast, and you could have direct access to the constituents every single week or twice a week.
No
or
doubt.
whatever.
And I think especially for conservatives, it's critical that you bypass the media.
Yeah.
And we saw it in this state. It was just we got regularly.
It was ridiculous.
We got regularly hosed.
Yeah.
And so therefore, what we're able to do with this podcast now, which you get enough numbers now that you get as much as you get on a newscast.
Yeah.
I mean, you just do.
Or more.
So if you've built something, and that's because you guys watch, and that is critical. So anyway, we wanted to bring you this because I think you're going to see the change and a sea change in how candidates work, and you have to constantly do it. It's no less work for the candidate, there's no doubt, but I can't tell you how many hours we spent in the car driving to various things, and then we get good crowds, but just look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. It doesn't work. And think about this, even one clip, even if we do one clip off of this show, which we do about 5 or 6 clips every show, let's say we did one clip and we even get low numbers on it, 1,000 people watch it. 1,000 people. Do you know how many events I'd have to go to hit 1,000? I'd probably have to go to at least 10 events.
Yeah,
you don't have to do that.
I mean, I think it's still important. I do think what I loved about those events is that we got to know the people that were voting, right? So that part you can't get. Like, I love the comments that we get in. I love the people that take time to email. I try to email most people back. I appreciate that community because I love that. I'm definitely an extrovert and I love to be around people. So I liked that part of the campaign because I felt like we got to hear their voices more. But I think you can absolutely extend a platform where people can have access to you and can talk to you. And then you can get the word out about your town hall.
No,
like you're going to have a town hall.
No, it's
you
true.
tell them through your social media stuff and your voice, and you actually invite people to show up. So listen, I just think we were onto something, and I'm disappointed we weren't able to do it. But thank you, New York Times, for finally finding my idea. You're welcome.
This is Obama's guy, right? So this is not, this is something I guarantee you Democrats, some of them are already doing it. AOC, people like that are doing it. And she's okay with it at times and figures it out to some degree. I don't think she's great at it, quite frankly.
I do think some people could step in it. I really do.
Oh, there's no question about that.
Can you imagine Deb Haaland doing a weekly podcast?
Well, I don't, look, I don't think I would design that for her. But what I would do if I'm running her campaign is I'm giving bite-sized stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
I do bite-sized stuff, and that's all right. That different people are good at different things.
Right.
If you're Turner, I'm doing a little longer form. Hull, I'm doing all sorts of get-it-done stuff, right?
Yeah.
I'm get-it-done guy.
Yeah.
And like build a brand around, I actually do it.
Right.
You guys can talk about, there's a lot of this going on.
Yeah, but I've actually done it.
do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
And if you're
could
Turner,
definitely
I
do
think
that.
you're doing the longer form stuff because I think he'd be better at it because he's a good communicator. So and then obviously Showboat. I mean, Showboat should be everywhere.
He should be on Netflix. I mean, again, I don't know how.
No, I agree with you. See, Showboat does a Netflix show. Forget everything else.
Yeah, he doesn't need to be running for governor.
No.
Just give the guy a show on Netflix, please. Netflix, he's your guy. Showboat Sam. We'll call it like Lincoln County Sheriff. How about that? And do that.
It's Lincoln County lawyer.
Oh, I know.
It's got to be.
No, but for him.
Nobody's a lawyer.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm trying to change it up, though, people. Okay.
All right, go.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about your article with Dan Boyd. Speaking of the Republican Party here in the state of New Mexico, here's the article headline. It says Republicans struggling with internal strife, political headwinds in largely blue New Mexico. State GOP officials say party recruited write-in candidates for several statewide races. This is by Dan Boyd. A vicious political environment.
Yeah, we cut off the beginning of this because it didn't include your humble correspondence.
Yeah,
so really
you could read the article about everybody else, but let's just talk about what Mark had to say about it, okay? So Mark Ronchetti, who ran unsuccessfully for U.S. Senate in 2020 and for the governor's office in 2022, said he thinks criticism of current New Mexico Republican Party leaders for the GOP's recent struggles is, quote, unfair.
No, wait, let me just explain that real quick.
Yeah.
I just don't think with big offices like that, the state party can't convince you to run. The state party can't say, you're going to run for this and we're going to put you up to do this. People have to volunteer and say, wait a minute, I will do this. I will put my family through this. It is incredibly difficult. It's a difficult decision. So that's why blaming people like Amy Barella and saying, Amy Barella didn't field a candidate and whatever. Amy Barella can't. Amy Barella can't walk into your house and tell you you're running for the United States Senate. Like, it doesn't work like that.
And I also think things have changed a lot between the days of like a big state party having a massive a lot of influence to what today's party actually helps you do. Now, could have the state party helped Mark out better? I'm going to say for the record, yes, they could have. I really am passionate about that. They should have. There's different leadership now. It's different. But I would say that, again, it's not the Republican Party's job to field the candidates. It's not. They can help with what mailers. They can help with some staffing
there's a bunch
things.
of stuff
they can
you
help
can
with
do. Yeah, you can help raise
organize
money.
events.
Mobilize people, do things like that. And again, the party can help. There's no question. It's just that at the end of the day, for the political environment we live in, and this is what you're about to hear, it's so vicious that it has to truly be a personal decision.
Okay, Ronchetti pointed out Republicans will likely face political headwinds nationally in the first general election since Trump was elected in 2024, and said some would-be candidates may be taking a pass due to the current political environment. Nationally, a total of 36 U.S. House Republicans have announced they will leave their seats at the end of their current term, citing family commitments, legislative gridlock, and other factors, while 21 House Democrats have also announced plans not to seek re-election. The exodus could make it even more difficult for Republicans to retain their current narrow majority on Capitol Hill. Quote, it's a vicious environment. It's not like running 20 years ago, said Ronchetti, who gave up his KRQE job to run for governor and currently hosts, here we have it, everybody, a popular podcast with his wife, Christy. I got my name in there, everybody. I'm very excited about that. Just kidding. And he spelled it right. Okay. While Republicans might struggle in this year's election cycle, he said there's a reason for optimism in future years, citing the party's recent voter registration surge in New Mexico compared to Democrats. I think down the road, there's reason for hope, said Ronchetti.
Okay, now before you read this last paragraph, I think this last paragraph, or at least the last one we're going to feature, these numbers are even better than we'd seen before. Remember, before Christy reads this, when we ran and lost by 6, the voter gap between Republicans and Democrats was 15 points. 15 points for Democrats. They walked in every election with a 2-touchdown plus advantage, right, on Republicans. Where are they now?
As of the end of February, there were nearly 444,000 registered Republicans across the state, or about 31.5% of New Mexico's total 1.4 million voters, according to Secretary of State's office data. Democrats made up roughly 40.7% of the state's total registered voters, with independent and minor party members making up the rest.
Okay, so now we are at a 9-point advantage for Democrats.
I would have begged for that.
Oh, there's no question. If we have a 9-point advantage, that's the gap. That's the gap we lost by. Now, it doesn't mean you get all those votes and every one of them, whatever. I get that. But it's getting closer. So that's why I would say, and we're about to jump into this, the Democrats have a problem because right now they are the party of extremism. A lot of what we're going to show you, we're going to show you 4 or 5 examples here in just a second, that they continually jump on extremist issues and people watch it and go, are you kidding me? They are hemorrhaging voters, not only in New Mexico, but across the country. And so you're seeing these numbers get closer. So I don't think it may show up in 2026. We've been very clear on that, but it will show up in 2028 and it will show up in 2030. So with this extremism that they continue to advocate for, and we'll give these specific examples, will definitely catch up with them. It's already catching up with them. And I'm telling you right now, things are changing. It's just don't use this year as the example of that.
Well, and I was glad to see that Dan Boyd actually put your quote in there where people have written to us and said how disappointing it is that we don't have a candidate to put up. Yes, it's true, but anybody in this world and in this space actually looks out and can see what's actually transpiring. This is a national trend right now. This is not just New Mexico. Unfortunately, for better or for worse, it matters who is in office. It is now directly impacting your state and the turnout for your state, what the vote's going to look like. So when people just kind of chirp in and say, well, I can't believe no decent candidate stepped up to the plate, there's reasons for that. That's because the people that have considered running actually can look at the forecast of that and see what the national space looks like. And it's very important to do that, especially with how much it takes time, resources, energy, your family time, everything to run. It's a great cost. It's not an easy decision to make. But
okay,
let's go back to Harry Enton.
So we're going to check in here with Harry Enton, and I want to use a theme here on a deep dive because the theme is that right now, despite the fact that Trump's numbers are not great, right? That they're not great. Everything going on with the Iran war, all the stuff, we can get into those things as well. But realistically, what's really important here is the fact that when people look at the Democratic Party, they see a party of extremism, and they're having trouble identifying with it, and the party is in real trouble, whether they realize it or not, and they're crazy not to realize it, because Republicans have had this problem at different junctures as well, but not to this degree. I mean, not like this. So just listen to what Harry Enton says here. It's super interesting stuff heading into the midterms.
Look at this, net favorability, party ahead at this point, midterm years with the GOP president. In 2018, Dems were up by 12. In 2006 on net favorability, which party you like more? Dems were ahead by 18. Republicans are actually ahead on net favorability at this point by 5 points. So Democrats are just simply running behind their previous benchmarks, and they need to be running well ahead of them if they want to take back the United States Senate, given that map.
To be clear, both parties are wildly unfavorable right now. However,
Democrats are even more unpopular than Republicans.
Some of these charts.
So interesting stuff there. Okay. And I will say, I agree. I think, Republicans have their own challenges. There's no doubt. But when you look day in and day out at the issues, you actually break down the issues. Where are you on immigration? Where are you on crime? Where are you on the economy? People are closer to Republicans across the board. And so that's a massive issue. And so what it made me start to think was, let's dive into when you start to hear the issues verbalized and people start saying, well, where do we stand as Democrats and why do they have so many of these issues? You can start seeing this. And we found one example that kind of jumped off the page.
Really horrible rule that came out
Rapinoe,
from
by
the
way.
International Olympic Committee. They've announced a new policy that they're calling, I can't even believe they're calling it this, because it has nothing to do with protecting women. I feel like two people who played at the very highest level for every competition that you possibly could don't agree with.
Okay, hold on real quick. She's talking to Sue Bird, her wife, and they're talking about, obviously, Megan Rapinoe was a soccer player for the U.S. women's soccer team. Sue Bird was a WNBA player and a college basketball player as well. She's very angry at the fact that the Olympic Committee will not let men compete in women's sports.
This and never felt like this was an issue at all. The protection of the female bracketed women's category. They're limiting people eligible to compete in the women's category to those who qualify as what they're calling quote unquote biological females.
Okay, that's a pretty simple situation.
Yeah.
And the
What
fact
they're
that
calling- what
she
they're
acts
calling-
like it's confusing. You know,
Yeah.
the chromosome situation is
very confusing, Mark.
Okay. She keeps going and she gets even worse.
This will require a once in a lifetime screening of all women's athletes for the SRY gene.
I
And
think
if an
most
athlete
women
tests
would be
positive for this
pleased to do.
gene, they will have to compete in the male category. We already know that biology, as much as we want it to be just nice and clean and tight and perfectly in one category or another, it's not.
What?
Okay, you're bonkers.
You're crazy town.
She really is.
Has she gone to a science class in seventh grade or
she's
not?
no, but this is crazy, right? You
Yeah.
just listen to her and go, what are you
Well,
talking
this is when you
and
talk
by the
about
way,
what's up is down and what's left is right and what's, you know, it's like, let's just confuse the waters. No, actually, if you go to a science class, you learn about genetics like in
what
8th or 9th
makes
grade.
her so disingenuous is she never competed against men in soccer. Oh, yes, she did actually. The under 15 team took on the women's team, our women's team, and beat them handily. Under 15-year-old boys and below, under 15, took them out, destroyed them.
Why didn't her wife ask her that question on the podcast?
She's never going to ask her that.
Okay.
But
All right,
let's
just
just keep
checking.
going.
All right.
Hold on. Keep listening to this.
We know that. So now what we're doing is subjecting everybody, all women and all people who are identifying as women, to this really invasive testing. That only to me just says like, oh, so we're just trying to whittle it down to a certain type of woman. Is that what we're doing? Like, that's really the whole game here. Like, there's been, you know, they sort of like lost the battle on gay marriage and lost the battle on all these things. So it's just like, we're going to have this whole campaign for all these years to just hate trans people, which is such a small percentage of the population. It's actually like on.
It has nothing. Okay, I can't even listen to her anymore. So it has nothing to do with hating trans. This is ridiculous. Okay, and it is very simple. Okay, it is very simple. But this shows you listen to her and you just kind of go, what are you talking about? What are you even getting at here? And what she says is so ludicrous. And you see that she's somebody who's such a phony because her whole athletic career, she competed against women. She did not compete against men. She didn't. And most normal people who aren't totally bonkers listen to that and go, what are you talking about? So that's my point on some of what.
Sorry, and just to clarify, the so super intrusive test to make sure you're a woman.
Yeah.
It's a cheek swab.
There we go. Okay.
I'm sorry, if you're a woman, you've had way more invasive procedures done in your lifetime than a cheek swab. Okay, let's just put it that way.
Very, very true. Okay, so it does not stop there. So I want to go to a different issue that is not like hot button like the sports issue. Okay, and this is Jamie Dimon from JPMorgan did an interview last week, and he's talking about where people live that work for JPMorgan. Where do they go? And people vote with their feet. And what he says here is interesting. And again, these are policies that end up affecting the parties.
Here's a lesson, and this lesson is true for companies, cities, states, and countries. You got to compete. There's no divine right to success. Just read the history books. So our headcount in Manhattan, when I got to JPMorgan, was 35,000, and now it's 26,000. Our headcount in Texas, it started at 11,000, now it's 33,000. That's what happens. And, you know, part of it's the highest individual taxes, highest estate taxes, highest corporate taxes, anti-business sentiment, you know, and that's what happens. And, you know, you could be any ideologue you want, but that's the real world. And people vote with their feet, and you can't get mad at them. You know, if you believe in a free country, if someone wants to move to Florida, that's their right. And so, yeah, if they make too many mistakes, you know, the mayors, including Mayor Mandami, should worry about police, hospitals, subways, sanitation, storms, healthcare, schools.
Okay, so makes the point, and which is exactly right. And this is what we always say about New Mexico. We live in a competitive environment. If you take doctors and say, we're going to sue you every chance we get, doctors are like, bye-bye, I'll go to another state.
Yeah,
and
smart.
who gets affected? Every single person in the state of New Mexico, because we don't have health care. If you have terrible education, parents look at that are very high earners and high achievers that could pay our taxes and could add to our communities in a huge way. They look at it and they go, no, you're last in education. I'm leaving. Crime, same thing. If you don't punish criminals, people look at it and go, you know what? They do punish criminals in Texas. They do punish them in Florida. I'm going to live there. I don't need to live here. We are in a competitive environment. There are 49 other states that want to take our smartest, best people. And if we don't start realizing that we're in that environment and this whole thing of, I'm going to punish the business, we're going to have everybody pay their fair share. Everybody does pay their fair share. And look, and I get it. If you have some, you have some person who goes out and they're able to afford the best of the best as far as accountants go, and they try to find little loopholes, and fine, deal with that all you want. But I'm just saying that this thought process that people don't pay their fair share and we're going to punish them and government's going to be the way to do it, it has led this state to follow every other state in the country. And that's why we have the issues we do.
Yeah, it's not the answers people are actually looking for. And some other things let's talk a little bit. Let's just switch gears really quickly to one of the states that seems to make and I lived there for 10 years, right? I lived in California for 10 years. So there's pros and cons to California, but some of the things that they do are a little bit loony.
Yeah.
Difficult.
But in this example, there's one more example before we get into what happens with gas prices there, and that is Gavin Newsom's wife.
Right.
And the reason I want to talk about her is because he's going to run for president, and her name is Jennifer. And she seems, some of the stuff I've watched on her, and there are people who jump all over a bunch of this stuff. Some of it to me seems a little bit tortured. But the reason I pulled this example is because she has this approach, and this is what I mean about the extremism. You talk about Diamond, who talks about specific policy problems they have, right? And you talk about Rapinoe, who's off the charts crazy. Well, if you listen to Jennifer Newsom,
who wants to be the first lady,
who would love to be the first lady, listen to the way she talks about her son and her sons. She actually has two, I think. The way she talks about him is her sons come out and there's something wrong with them. The minute they're born, there is something wrong with them that has to be fixed. Okay? Just listen to what she says about this.
I've given our boys dolls. Even if they tear the head off, I've given them dolls to learn that care and caregiving is not just an activity that's reserved for women, but that it's also an activity that is a responsibility of men. What I've done with both my daughters and my sons is if I'm reading a book and the protagonist is a male, I just change the he to a she. And it just normalizes for my sons in particular. I don't even just do it for my girls. I do it for my sons because I want them to see that women can be the center of a story, that women matter, that women are interesting.
What?
At the end of the day, we're all kind of like in this place in history maybe where we're recognizing what it is to ultimately deconstruct all these gender roles and ultimately be human. And
what?
That's exciting to me. So
it's exciting to her.
I'll just continue to kind of do my work and try and deconstruct all of these like limiting narratives about ultimately what it means to be human.
What? Okay, I'm sorry. I couldn't be more proud of raising daughters and being a strong woman myself. But God created two different genders for a reason. They have different roles. They have different expectations. My daughters don't need it. I read so many stories and so many novels to our children. I can't imagine taking characters and trying to change them to be female characters so my girls would feel more empowered or more equalized. I just think that's insane. That's something that you learn your identity through Christ. You learn your identity through God. That's who gives you your identity. You're born to be a woman. You're born to be a boy. Like, these are the things that God has established for you. There's roles for both of them. You don't be like deconstructing gender. This is the answer. I just feel like she's losing her mind. She's losing it.
But that's the further example I'm talking about. First of all, I think she's going to be a very real liability for him. And because I think when she talks like she does, it's repellent and can be repellent to men. Because you listen to it and you go, effectively what she's saying here is the minute men come out, boys come out, her own boys, there's something wrong with you. You don't realize that women can have an important role. That's garbage.
Yeah.
It's garbage. When
by
you
the way,
grow up in a family and you realize everything that your mom does and how critical she is to your family, whether she's just a mother who has a job, or is just a mother who stays home, or is just a mother, whatever, it doesn't matter. She's not just a mother. That's the point. Like, she does so many other things, and you see it, and boys realize that. They respect that. The thought that they tear the head off. Okay, boys are boys.
I'm sorry. My brother broke every doll's head off of my dolls. It didn't make something wrong with him.
To the speech of, we've got to take these roles, we've got to scramble them up. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, this is the sort of stuff that normal people listen to and go, lady, what is your deal? Like, what are you trying to do? So this is what I mean by time after time, this extremism, this whole thing that is like, listen, everything this country was built on, we have to stop it. We have to tear it apart. Yeah. Men aren't men, women aren't women, roles aren't roles. Scramble it, get rid of it. And again, there's no question we have much more of a biblical view on this country and the way we live our lives. She doesn't have to have that. But to sit there and talk about this, it is the reason, I think, the Democratic Party should be very concerned in the respect that the way they talk about issues, normal people listen to it and go, okay.
Yeah, I would even say you think it's men repellent to men. I'd argue it's repellent to women too. Like, women that raise boys, women who raise girls. I don't care. Like, there's roles for both of them. Like, we work together cohesively. It doesn't make any sense. But let's keep talking because it doesn't end there. No.
So let's go to California now. And I thought this was funny. So CBS California came out with an investigative story on why are California's gas prices so high? What the heck is going on around here? Because all their politicians blame the oil companies for price gouging. And so they did an actual study and figured out, they're not price gouging. They're just not. Now, I didn't cut that. I cut a couple other things. So the first thing I cut was the reporter explaining, hey, I uncovered why it's so expensive. And I know, I get on the edge of your seat. And once you hear this, you're not going to believe it. Or you're going to be like, yeah, no kidding.
Now, before we examine what that means for the future of gas prices in California, let's break down why California's gas is already so much more expensive than other states.
Okay, here we go.
First, you have the global price of crude, which we all pay, and the federal tax, which we all pay. Then there's distribution and refining, which is more expensive in California. But here's the part we can actually quantify. California's special gas blend tax on 10 to 15 cents per gallon. There's another 63 cents in state taxes and fees, plus 37 cents for California's climate programs, and of course, local and state sales tax. Now, at $6 per gallon, that adds up to nearly $20 more in California every time you fill up an average-sized tank.
Can't get that cup of coffee in the morning sometimes.
To better understand why and how that impacts you, we got rare access inside one of California's remaining refineries. So why are refineries leaving?
California is a tough place to do business for refiners.
Overlooking the San Francisco
it is, and they've
skyline.
kicked them all out, right? And so you see that and go, okay, no kidding. But at least they're doing the story. At least they're doing the story
It took them
and telling
30
the
years,
truth.
but still, it's there. And this is what's scary too, Mark, is that, New Mexico likes to follow the lead of California. So
100%.
There's been taxes added to our gasoline. And so it does get very scary.
And
because
believe me, they just had a bill over the legislative session where they were trying to pull back oil and gas again, trying to follow California's lead here. California says by 2030 or whatever, you won't be able to get an internal combustion engine. Idiot. I mean, stupid. Like this, that just will not work and cannot happen. But anyway, not that eventually we won't have a lot more battery operated cars. We will, absolutely. But it is to go and put that kind of time frame on it is ridiculous. So then she comes out later in the story, which I thought was pretty hilarious. And they talk a little bit about what they've had to do because they don't have any refineries anymore. They don't have the oil and gas they need in the state. It's not there now. So what do? Their whole goal is to take their footprint as far as carbon goes and shrink it, right? Okay, so listen here. So in this clip, they talk about, A, was there any price gouging? Did they find out that there was actual price gouging? And then B, because they don't have enough in the way of refineries, what do they do to get the oil and gas that they desperately need?
Then establish time.
You see, California is a so-called energy island. Unlike other states, we don't have pipelines pumping in gas, so it's got to come in by tanker. And now, instead of refining all California gas in California, well, we're outsourcing to Asia to make California's special blend, where environmental standards, they aren't as strict, and they have to ship it across the ocean.
Okay, wait a minute. They go to Asia to get it, and then they ship it all the way back.
Well done,
Well
California.
done.
A
Nice
little
job.
round of applause for
Hey,
California.
seriously,
Yeah,
great job.
let's
Let's-
just really good job.
Great work. Keep
Yeah,
going.
great work.
Can take weeks, increasing pollution and increasing the potential for price spikes during local or global shortages. For instance, China has already stopped exporting fuel because they don't have enough gas right now for their own drivers.
I've been talking about this for years, okay?
Chevron President Andy Waltz says after years of attacking oil companies, there are signs the political conversation is shifting.
What it took was 2 refineries to close. And then they said, oh, maybe they're not price gouging.
Is this an I told you so moment?
For me, it is.
From the oil industry to agency heads and lawmakers.
No doubt it was, very adversarial at times during the special sessions.
That was probably the beginning of the shift, is when that report came back and Governor Newsom couldn't prove that there's price gouging.
Price gouging.
Okay, so anyway, there's a lot more to this story. It goes on about 7 minutes, but it was just one of those stories that I give CBS California credit for, to say, hey, again, should have happened a long time ago. And this goes back to our point we always make it here. Because the media won't do their job, or it takes them forever to do their job, things get so much worse than they would have to be if they got on their job and were just fair from the very beginning. If they were, Californians would have known long before now that their own policies are killing them, and they're killing their pocketbooks, and it's not helping them. So let's get it fixed. Stop making up lies that there's price gouging when there's not. Stop making up the fact that you don't need refineries. You don't need any of this. We're going to cut out the internal combustion engine. That's ludicrous.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see it and you see New Mexico trying to follow their path, you realize how lost they are, and how in the state of New Mexico, there has to be pushback. You cannot follow California. You don't have their tax base. You don't have their development base. You don't have their economy. If you go and kill oil and gas in the state of New Mexico, you will destroy this economy, and you will take poverty and skyrocket it. All the programs that you want, paying for early child care, everything, all of it will be gone. All of it will be gone. So don't be ridiculous in the way you deal with this state.
Okay. Pay attention to who you vote for, people. It matters. Okay. So we allegedly have this ceasefire now with Iran. This has been such a very volatile situation, as we all know. That's a choice word by me, I understand, because it has been a 47-year ongoing issue with Iran. Trump threw some gasoline on it with his comments on Monday, with lowering the boom and saying, hey, they need to do all this, or I'm basically going to wipe the civilization off the planet, which is pretty extreme language coming from Trump, I think. But do we really have this ceasefire? Is it really happening? Let's take a listen to what J.D. Vance has to say about this.
I do think there are good developments here. And let me just say a few things. First of all, what the president set out to do was decimate the Iranian military, decimate their ability to wage conventional war. And that military objective, as the president said yesterday, as I said yesterday, has been achieved. And because of that, what the president did is he basically issued an ultimatum to the Iranians. He said, open up the straits, stop trying to hold the world's economy hostage, and we'll engage in a ceasefire. And that's exactly the agreement that we came to last night. The Iranians have agreed to open up the straits. The United States has agreed to stop attacking. And that, not just the United States, but also our allies, have agreed to stop attacking. And that is the basis of this fragile truce that we have, which is now, 8 to 12 hours old.
Okay, so that in and of itself is a breakdown that really kind of distills everything else down. There have been lists out there that the Iranians have put out, and U.S. media is dutifully reporting them like they're true, which they're not, clearly. The Iranians lie like no other government in the world. So give me a break on that. But what he's saying is the deal is as simple as this. There's a pause in hostilities, and they open up the strait. Okay, now that is the Iranians' trump card. The strait is their only trump card. So if they're backing off of that to get themselves a break from the bombing, that is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it could be a step in the right direction. The question is what happens next. We just don't know enough, right? Mm-hmm. We just don't know what's going to happen. But everything else in the world, all the back and forth doesn't mean a thing. What really means something is the fact that if the strait is open and traffic gets through, and from what we're hearing, the Chinese leaned on the Iranians and said, open up the strait. Because again, this is what we talked about a few weeks ago. Mm-hmm. The way this whole thing works is one of the people that was going to be applying pressure were the Chinese.
Right.
On the Iranians to say, the Chinese I'm sure they're not thrilled with what we're doing, but they can't influence us.
Right.
What they can do is they can go to the Iranians and say, do this and open up. So we'll see what happens here. But it's not the only thing he talked about. He also talked about the fact of what it is like. And it's interesting for Vance, because Vance has the reputation of being somebody who does not want to intervene in these things. And the Iranians actually asked that he was one of the people they negotiated with, because he has this reputation of being a guy who doesn't want to be involved in these things, but he's in the middle of it right now. And so he talked about what it's like to negotiate with him.
Now, here's what I'll say about this. I've learned a lot about the Iranian system and a lot about the way the Iranians negotiate. Because the president told me last night the Iranians are better negotiators than they are fighters. I'm sure they don't like to hear that, but it's true. But here's a couple things. So, one, just in the response that we've seen from various segments of Iran, you have on the one hand people within Iran who have responded very favorably. The foreign minister who said, look, we agreed to the United States' terms. We'll do a ceasefire. We'll do a negotiation. We'll open the Straits of Hormuz, and then we'll see if we can come to more agreement down the road. So some of the people have responded favorably and have said the right things. And then you have some people on social media within their system who are basically lying about what we've accomplished militarily. They're lying about the nature of the agreement. They're lying about the nature of the ceasefire. And so you have just, even within their system, and this is why I say this is a fragile truce, you have people who clearly want to come to the negotiating table and work with us to find a good deal. And then you have people who are lying about even the fragile truce that we've already struck. And that's just an interesting thing about their system. And
okay, so part of that interesting thing and part of the example, which the vice president mentions, is right here. CNN puts this out on Wednesday afternoon. Iran halts Hormuz oil tanker traffic after Israel's Lebanon attacks, Iranian media says. Okay, that's exactly what he's talking about. Useful idiots in the media that will jump in and say these things. Now, does it mean that this whole thing won't fall apart? It may well fall apart, because I don't think you have a structure in Iran to run the government. So I think you have all these disparate factions. Some of them are like, hey, yeah, we gotta reach a deal here, or we're not gonna be around much longer. Or you have others who say, no, we're taking this thing, we're dead enders, right? So it just depends. But when he talks about the media and what the media does, this is one of those issues. And then you broadly look at what is happening in the United States and with this particular conflict. And this is one of those conflicts that you look at, and it has not been one of those rally around the flag moments.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this on prior shows. Again, Trump took a different approach in years past. Presidents will try to get some presidents, not all presidents, will try to rally people and get people behind the movement of going into a country or taking over things. Trump has a different approach, obviously. He attacks, and then he's working backwards somewhat to try to get the American popularity back up, or, get their support back up. Well, Harry Anton says that basically this is not going to come to any shock to anybody. The Iran war is impacting Trump's popularity. I would argue that does have a lot to do with how the media are covering what's actually happening.
On air, why is there not a rally around the flag event for Donald Trump? In fact, you look at these numbers, they're absolutely bonkers. There's been the opposite of a rally around the flag event. Look at this. Net approval change due to actions in Iran. If you look a month in, back during the Iranian hostage crisis, look at this. Jimmy Carter saw his net approval rating jump up by 32 points. There was a massive rally around the flag event.
Yeah, really
but look
did.
At this. Trump's net approval rating.
Until Reagan showed up.
It's actually down. It's actually down 1, 2, 3, 4 points. 4 points since the beginning of the war in Iran. And indeed, you can look at wars during the last 35 years in the Middle East, and you see the same story. That is, usually you see rally around the flag events. You're not seeing that here. Look at this. 1 month change in net approval ratings during the Iran war, the Iraq war, and the Gulf War. Both of these, of course, being fought with Iraq. And look at this. Again, you see Trump here, 4 points underward. Look at this with George W. Bush. 14 points above. That is, his net approval rating jumped by 14 points. And look at George H.W. Bush. My goodness gracious, a jump of 31 points.
Okay, so I think there are two reasons for this. One that you just mentioned, the way this was all handled, it was much more of a strike while the iron's hot and go and then build support after. Mm-hmm. But number two, I think now we have a media who, because it's Donald Trump, will do anything possible to make sure he fails. And they don't care if they put out stuff that A, is either deceptive, or B, openly roots against our own country, or says things that just flat aren't true, right? So this has been a very successful military campaign, but it's not finished. finished. And so we're still just not there yet. So the question is, does the military campaign continue, or is there a negotiation that leads to the end of the military campaign? We don't know, right? We don't know, but we know this much. The media is invested in making sure that Trump is a failure. That is priority number one. That was not the case when George H.W. Bush got us involved in the Iraq war, or involved in what happened in kicking Iraq out of Kuwait, and then George W. Bush as well going in for the Iraq war. It was just a different country where the media, not always fair to Republicans. In my lifetime, I've never seen the media be fair to Republicans, but they weren't this bad. They weren't, right. Trump is evil, and I will do anything to wreck him. So that's where we are now. That, along with Trump's approach, I think have led to this. And obviously, there are insidious ways in which you see things that are not accurate start to pile up in your inbox.
Well, yeah. And speaking of piling up in your inbox, let's take a quick, just a little tiny clip, a look at this. This is just Apple News, right? This is just a little snapshot into how many stories that you get from Apple News that are left-leaning. Based on this, 434 left-leaning sites are what Apple pulls from versus 5 right-leaning sites.
And then some details from the article from MRC.
Apple News is guilty of more than just suppressing right-leaning news. It ran more headlines from left-leaning outlets in March than any of the other big 4 news apps, solidifying its place as the most radically left of them all. MRC made this major discovery by analyzing Apple News' top 20 daily stories each morning throughout March and using the independent media firm All Sides to evaluate each outlet's bias. Apple News promoted more left-leaning stories than Google News, Microsoft, MSN, and Yahoo News in March. MRC's findings showed that Apple News selected articles from left-leaning media outlets for 434 out of the 592 total All Sides rated stories in the top 20 of its morning editions throughout March. In contrast, Yahoo News featured 400 All Sides rated left-leaning stories. Google News featured 382. Microsoft MSN featured 226. Apple News continued to suppress stories from right-leaning outlets, featured only 5 articles in March, down from a whopping 8 in February.
Yeah. I mean, it's craziness.
So where you get your news, what you're listening to, what you're reading, the content you pull in, the content that the younger generations...
But those aggregators, right? They're an aggregator, right? They're an aggregator. It's like Google's an aggregator, right? And so when you put things into your Google machine and you see the kick out and you think, oh my gosh, that's it. Those are the details. You don't realize that's some of the most insidious stuff that you get.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's why it is one of those things that you have to pay attention to where you get your information. And that's why I think so many of us run into other people from they have different beliefs than us. And we're always just amazed. Like, how could you believe that? I mean, there's so much information showing something different.
Yeah.
And you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, that is why. And that's why it's so important for people to find news sources, even if you don't always agree with them, and watch them, see what they say.
Yeah.
Because you should know what people are saying on the other side. All right, we're going to end with Artemis 2.
Okay.
Okay.
So Artemis 2, it's quite the accomplishments of this historic achievement.
They're still up. I think when do they come back?
They come in Friday.
Okay.
They're supposed to land in Friday in San Diego.
Yes.
That's the game plan right now.
They're going to splash in?
They're going to splash in, is my understanding of it.
Or do they go into the Indian Ocean?
It said near San Diego.
Oh, near San Diego. Okay.
That's what I read as of this morning. So
yeah.
in case things change, then we'll keep you posted on that. But obviously, this is the furthest human mission ever. Astronauts will travel 6,000 miles beyond the far side of the moon. First crew to the moon since 1972. First crew mission near the moon in over 50 years. And proving ground for future landing, tests, procedures, and technologies to prep for the first lunar landing of the Artemis program. And this is the longest crewed spacecraft trip. It's been 10 days, or it will have been 10 days when it's all said and done. So let's take a quick look at some of this video.
Yeah, let's do it. There we go. This is from NASA. So, I mean, this is so cool. I'm sorry, but right now we are doing some amazing stuff with NASA. And I think you start looking at some of the private things that have happened with SpaceX and maybe Blue Origin. We'll wait and see. Mm-hmm. But I think Blue Origin's going to have a role eventually. And you start seeing what we're doing here. And again, this is something most other presidents would get a tremendous amount of credit for. And Trump has supercharged this, moved it along, and had a good positive role in this. But no, we're not going to do that. And I get it, whatever. But you start seeing some of these pictures and you realize what's happening here. It is incredible.
Yeah, and they're doing a lot of testing, I guess, on radiation, things of that nature. They're trying to do a lot of different testing that they've never done before, is what I read. They've had, one of the biggest concerns they've had, Mark, is with the toilet.
Well,
they're
there
still
was
having
some
issues
smoke apparently coming out of the toilet.
Yeah, and that was the Apollo's crew issue too, if you recall any of those stories. They had serious issues with their toilet, which you just don't even think about that. I didn't even think about that until I started reading it. I was like, oh, goodness gracious.
You got like deuces chasing you around.
That's what happened in the Apollo, not on this one.
There's no...
Not on this one. This was on the Apollo.
There's no gravity, and then the deuces just following you around.
And the smell apparently is prevalent even if there's no gravity.
Oh, gosh.
That's what I read. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I'm somebody who...
Look at that shot, though.
I know. Beautiful.
Unbelievably gorgeous.
It is.
Look, we have a great country. Look, you may not always agree with what we do as a country. We all have our issues at times, but this is the greatest country in the world. Don't forget it.
Yeah, and I loved the fact that Trump called those guys and what the guys on the crew had to say to Trump. They were very thankful. They thanked his administration. They thanked his help with NASA.
Because they really pushed to do this, as every president should be.
Right.
This matters.
So I just thought that was a really good back and forth exchange. If you haven't listened to that conversation with Trump and the astronauts, I encourage you to do so. It's a very sweet moment for all Americans, I think. Thanks for spending some time with us. We appreciate it. You guys, a lot of you have asked how you can help us. The best way you can help us, first, tell your friends about our show. We come out on Sundays and Wednesdays twice a week, and you can donate to us as well if you'd like to at nodoubtaboutitpodcast.com. That's how we keep our lights on. Or you can sign up for our emails to make sure you never miss a show. We only send emails to those of you who sign up for it. And we only send you an email about our shows and our news. That's it. So thank you so much again for spending time with us. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you back this weekend. Take care and God bless.
You've been listening to the No Doubt About It podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at No Doubt About It Podcast.
No doubt about it.
The No Doubt About It podcast is a Choose Adventure Media production. See you next time on No Doubt About It.
There is no doubt about it.